I went from the black movement to the hippie movement to the Jesus movement. It's kind of like a wave, another wave, and another wave. And I was still not satisfied that I had found the truth.
And I was 48 years old, and you start to wonder, what does it all mean? You know, is it? My buddies were talking about retiring at 55 and moving somewhere and getting a cabin and going fishing, and I said to myself, is that really all there is to the rest of life?
I'd been bouncing around between denominations and different ministries and that, and I felt like everybody went home when we were done, because there was like a set thing to do and then you were done. And then everybody went home and made their own money and bought their own pots and pans and had their own little kitchenette, and some of them had others to be with and some didn't. And so I always kind of wondered what happens to those of us who don't.
Take the riches of this world away. Take the fantasies of life. All these things have no meaning to me, but there is something of great value to me. To belong to you and to know your heart.
I would read about it in the Bible in the chapters Matthew 5, 6, and 7, which is the Sermon on the Mount, about the disciples and the life they live. And one day I was teaching in North Dakota. I got on my knees and said, God, I'll go anywhere. I don't care where it is in the United States. I'll teach in any school anywhere. Lead me to people that live this life I'm reading about, if it exists anywhere. And he did. And that year was the year that I met a couple who opened up their home and were having Bible studies, and they were building a cafe. I said in my heart, because I could see that they were living, that this couple lived by faith, and they were taking in anybody who wanted a new life. I said, wow, this is the church I was looking for. This is the people I prayed about, even though they weren't claiming to be a church at the time. In my heart, I said, this is it.
So our community started in '72, small household in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Young couple, Gene and Marcia, wanted to open their home and give up everything they had the way that Jesus commanded his disciples, and it just kind of happened. The 12 tribes communities today that we consist of are a network, even a nation of communities around the world, 9 different countries currently. I would say they're the restoration of what was going on in the first century with the first church.
There's no way to characterize us, really. As far as age, race, sex, background, we're just everything. But without the common faith, this life doesn't work.
Opposed to Christianity that says Jesus is going to do it all. We can live any kind of life we want down here as long as we got our ticket, you know. I believe in Jesus. You know, that's a dead body. You got a head, no body. That's dead. But then communism says, well, we're going to do it. We don't need God, you know. Man's going to create this utopia on earth. That's a body without a head. That's dead too. And we understand that the head and the body are together. Christ is the head and we are the body. And so as on a daily basis, as we get up in the morning, we, the body, collectively give ourselves as a living sacrifice to say, okay, together we give you our life today in the morning to do your will.
There's no one in the community who leaves the community and goes and works as CEO of some corporation somewhere or any other business. Yeah, someone doesn't work at Starbucks, but we all work together.
Somewhere around 50 people, men, women, and children, live in the community in Manitou Springs. There's 2 houses. One was a bed and breakfast, but both are 3-story with finished basements. So there's a lot of space here.
I was a college French teacher for 23 years. The only job I ever had. My son was ready for college, and I could not look the boy in the eye and tell him if he went to college he'd be happy, and live a satisfying life. I couldn't do it. He went to school for a year, did fine, had a chance to go back to Europe, and that's where he met the community. He went home with them and never left, and didn't even go back to school and get his clothes. He didn't tell me anything about the spiritual aspects or any of that. He just said, come over and see what I'm doing. And since we'd lived in Europe together and he and I were close, it wasn't any big deal for me to go back to Europe for the summer. And I walked in the middle of a gathering, and somebody was going through something kind of difficult, and they said, well, maybe you'd rather go back outside and wait. But it was no deal to me because I'd been a psych student for years, so it just seemed like a kind of a encounter group situation, and it didn't disturb me at all. But what I saw were there were all these people that cared about what my son was doing, that he cared about them, and I thought, wow. After a while I thought, wow, maybe there's room for me. And I said, how long can I stay? And they said, as long as you want. And I thought, where's the catch? What's wrong with this picture? It didn't say, but that was the truth.
When I showed up at the community, I knew I was home. I saw the people dancing together in unity. That was one thing that really was clear for me. There was a huge circle of dancers, but something struck me about it. I started crying. I couldn't help it. I'd never seen people dancing together like that. People who obviously loved one another and were really united. These people were living the way that God said to live.
I'm really thankful that it's possible that I can learn how to love. And I know that's vague, but I know that I have a wonderful wife and a child on the way. And I've seen that I would have no way of making a marriage work in this world on my own. With my own way of thinking about things, I don't think I could get along with anybody long enough to stay married. But in this life, I have so many friends who help me to have understanding for my wife and help her to have mercy on me, and we're learning how to love one another.
I'm glad I'm 66 years old, and I'm glad at this point to have something useful to do with my life, rather than sit in front of TV or go fishing or whatever. It wouldn't mean anything anyhow. At least this, I know I'm not doing this for me, I'm doing it for us, and it makes it worthwhile. It really does.
It's not just a simple sinner's prayer, it's a covenant that we make. It's a covenant we make with God and with one another, and we say, come home. We say, come home. There's a home where you belong, where you have a place.
Are you with